Well, hi everybody. Welcome back to our continuing the conversation from Sunday. My name is Cullum. I'm the youth ministry coordinator here at St. Anne's Parish in Saskatoon, and with me today is my boss and our shepherd, Father Matt. Say hi.
Hi, everyone. Father Matthew. I'm the pastor here at St. Anne's.
So you just get the dynamic duo today, I guess, but we'll probably have a rotating group of faces over the weeks as we develop this. And yeah, we're just excited to kind of dive into the conversation from, I think it was the fifth Sunday in Easter, if I got my math
Yeah,
right,
yeah, that's
Father
right.
Matt. And just to talk about kind of the homily and the readings and what kind of struck us and maybe things we're still musing or pondering around. And hopefully it can be a useful reflection to you. If you're watching this on YouTube, or on Facebook, feel free to comment. If you do like a little watch party, a few people have been doing that. That's been kind of fun. We'd like to hear maybe your thoughts and your reflections, and maybe over time we can kind of integrate them into the process. So get engaged and give us your feedback. It's helpful and it's wonderful. So how you doing, Father Matt?
Great. I'm doing well. We had the Snowbirds did their flyover this morning. I think it happened as I was reading the gospel. I heard the sound
Oh,
of
really?
planes flying overhead. So
That's awesome.
they stole my idea. I did this at the beginning of the pandemic, I'd like to point out, but still nice for the Snowbirds to do the same thing. They're
Yeah,
welcome to.
I'm not sure Jesus was
Yeah,
in a monstrance with them, but
yeah, I
still,
know, I know. But we
still,
can't
still
all
pretty
we can't
cool.
all do that.
We won't hold it against them. I will hold it against them because I'm working from home these days, and I live in Warman. And I looked at the outline that I think they went Saskatoon, and then they kind of took like a hard west direction that I think they missed Warman and Martinsville. I didn't
Ooh,
hear them, so
oh my.
I'm a little choked about that, but it's
Well,
fine.
hey, I also flew over Warman, so you're welcome there
That
too.
we did see. The kids were yelling in the backyard.
Appreciate
Chalk one up for Jesus and Father.
it. Awesome.
There you go. All right, shall we dive into our conversation here?
Sure. Yeah, I guess we'll get started. So we're looking at the homily that we had last weekend and the readings that we had. And one thing I kind of felt was interesting is the kind of the way that the homily began was actually inspired by our conversation last week.
Hmm.
And it was a great point. I think that Jasmine brought us into just the conversation was ending about sometimes this fear that we have to celebrate the goodness that we have and the goodness that we are. And so I don't think it had to get a lot into that, but just to point out how helpful it was for me to have that conversation. And thanks to Jasmine and Colin for giving me the ideas that I could then be inspired by in the next homily.
Yeah, it's neat to see kind of your organic process of how some things inspire and keep moving. I'm gonna plug my headphones in. I realize I didn't do that, but
Oh, yeah.
so hopefully there's not any crazy feedback. But there we go. We should be
All
better.
right.
Yeah, and there's so much to go back to of that idea of we so struggle with that. And your example of just framing it from the kids to the adults is quite real, and it always goes back to the story of I took the lay formation program a few years ago, and there was another classmate of us or alumni, or I don't know what we refer to ourselves, and we ran into each other a couple years later, and she was making some comment about our kids, just kind of affirming, oh, they're so cute or they're so talented, whatever. And maybe like the problem is even that I don't even remember what it was, because I remember I've kind of flippantly was still like, oh yeah, and she kind of like scolded me like in the moment, and she's like, no, no, no. She's like, when somebody is like affirming you or like your children, like we're like acknowledging the goodness and like the work of how like God is working, and especially like in your children, like you've formed them and you've developed them, like so this is a honoring and compliment to you and the work of what God's doing in your life. And I was kind of like, oh, I thought I was just being polite.
As I put it, like I felt uncomfortable doing that, but then I thought, like, isn't that the point? It's the simple fact that I feel uncomfortable saying it. People may feel uncomfortable hearing it.
Yeah.
Illustrates how I don't know, we don't know how to do that well, I guess.
Yeah, it's we talk about love languages and affirmations and this, but I think as a society we do a pretty crappy job of it, right? And I think the problem is people have a desire for it, but then when we do it, we scold people. We think they're being prideful or over the top. Like it's a hard balance to live. And anyways, yeah, I liked it, and I just have to say that like my wife and I like literally laughed out loud with the whole killing it. Like I just But I was like, it's good. It's
I got
good.
more of a reaction than I thought it would. I got a few emails with people
Yeah.
liking that line as well, which I didn't
Well,
expect. But
I mean, in fairness, I haven't heard a priest say I'm killing it very much from the pulpit. So
oh, come on, guys. Well,
maybe that's a challenge to your fellow priests, you know?
let's all celebrate a bit more.
Yeah, I'm sure they're all
But then
killing
maybe
it.
to get into the more meat of the homily.
Yeah.
So the main theme I wanted to get into, though, is kind of following in on that, is these amazing words from Jesus in the gospel that those who believe in me, Jesus says, will do the works that I do. And in
Hmm.
fact, will do greater works than these.
Yeah.
And I read that and I even said that. And I thought, oh my goodness, like we will do greater works than Jesus. And to get to that, though, I tried to apply it to the situation we're in right now facing this virus. And I used the example of the church in Africa that I was really inspired by with a trip I took there a few years ago.
Hmm.
The way that the church in Africa caring for people being devastated by a different virus of HIV and AIDS.
Hmm.
But that does make me think, like, what about us here? And how are we as the church doing, responding in love to this crisis we're in right now?
Yeah, kind of that pivot from, virus to virus,
Yeah. Yeah.
two very different ones, but the challenge still being the same, and I thought it was good. And I liked the focus on essentially an individual, say this is the corporate church, but what is the church? It's the body of Christ. It's made up of the people of God, right? It's, the sons and daughters, the chosen race, the royal priesthood, right? It's the work of God is through our hands, hands at work. And so I just thought it was good of like, it's easy to say, well, that guy's awesome, but why can't I be, and it gave me pause. And I think, I don't know where everybody's at. It'd be interesting to hear. Like, I think I was joking yesterday, I think on the chaplet again of, feedback of how we're doing things at the parish and just asking people of like, we do quarterly reviews. And I feel like right now I'm doing like every 2-week reviews,
Yeah.
because everything is changing so often and how we're adapting. And I think for me anyways, the first couple weeks of quarantine was kind of all about me. It was just like, am I okay? Is my family okay? I was maybe concerned about my neighbors, about not getting sick from them or making them sick, but
Mhm.
it wasn't a lot more than that, to be honest. And there's something about putting first things first, but
And I think it makes sense to start there, right? Because if
yeah,
we're not okay, then we can't take care of others, right?
but
Like
but I
that's a
think there
starting
has,
point. I think that's important.
yeah. And I think there has been a push a little bit in me of like, okay, but who have I called this week to check in on, and I know our parish, we've been trying to do that and go is, I did a little thing of Lysol wiping and giving notes to my senior neighbors of how they're doing. And they didn't need anything, but just that checking out. But I mean, that was a couple weeks in before I started doing that. And um, I think it's a good challenge because a lot of the habits that maybe some of us had of actually like, doing these corporal works of mercy, a lot of them some of us can't do right now.
Yeah.
So I think it's for some creativity of to say, maybe sometimes we got complacent. It was like, well, I'm just used to visiting the prison, or I'm just used to going to the hospital. I'm just, it was almost like, now we're back to the drawing board a little bit.
Yeah, that's an interesting way to put it. And then that's, I guess, the challenge that I felt from these readings is that we do need to go back to the drawing board and find new ways to love, right? That it's not enough just to say, well, I'm going to be safe and that's all I'm going to do.
Yeah.
And I appreciate too, like you had mentioned, like you're talking about like what you and your family have been doing. And I know in the homily, I just used the word church without really like explaining a lot what that meant.
Mm-hmm.
But I think you're right that it's often when we hear that word church, we think of like what's happening at the Vatican or like what's happening in this building or the diocese.
Yeah.
But really like the church is each one of us. And so whenever we say, well, the church needs to do this, what we're saying is like, I need to do this is really what that
Yeah.
call is.
And it's good to get that personal challenge. And, my issue in ministry life is, I was a parish guy and then, working at the Dawson office for 10 years and then coming back is, I had a lot of that, some of the dioceses like the church got to do this church. And I was like, you realize the church is 13 people up here, like,
Yeah.
or whatever, like we're people, and maybe we're taking the gifts or the BA appeal that goes to offices that are run by individuals and committees and programs, initiatives is ultimately the church comes back to the work of the people of God, right? The individual people. And I think sometimes like I say, I was saying before, like I love being part of the Catholic Church, that I can say, like, we run these hospitals, we educate children, we feed the poor. There is like a badge of honor to some degree of that and what the church has accomplished. But I can't ride the coattails of the history of the church and
Yeah.
the Mother Teresa's. Like, where's, am I called to do hands at work or whatever that looks like,
Or like I said, reaching out to your neighbors, right? Like
Yep.
if every Catholic in the world reached out to the neighbors on their streets, we'd be reaching out to the entire planet right there,
Yeah.
individually, one on one. And that's beautiful.
And I think we need more of that. And I think some of us sometimes feel like you get passionate about this cause. I'm going to start like a nonprofit. And sometimes I was like, I have these big ideas, and I was like, well, maybe my idea is like just to find something I love and just like give to it, be on the board of it, just support it. I don't think we need so many new ideas and new charities. I'm not like discouraging new ones
Yeah.
necessarily if they're responding to needs, but sometimes it's just getting involved,
Yeah.
just, doing my piece, I don't have to start a new thing reaching out to impoverished children or justice issues, right? Like we have been sponsors with Chalice for, 11 years,
Yeah.
and I know that has made a difference. And our family state, like eventually we want to go to Chile, to the sites we've been sponsoring and meet, Marisol. And we're on to our second child that we've
Yeah.
supported who now has moved out because of the work we've done, right? That $33, 37, whatever it is, I know is making a difference. And so
Mhm.
that's a piece of what we could do. But now as we've developed and grown, it's like, okay, what's the next thing we can do? And we
Yeah.
started to get inspired because of our niece, like Hope for Malawi or the Kids Care Garage Sale. Like what's the next thing and how can we bring our kids into it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love too what you're saying about like with Chalice, because I have my sponsored child is actually like an elderly woman from Peru.
Oh,
And I was
awesome.
looking through all the pictures they have of all the little smiling faces. There is like looks like this grumpy old woman. I thought she's the one. But I love that, like you say, it's not just a matter of sending money there, but like wanting to like reach out personally as you can as well. And that's something too that I was inspired again by this Hands at Work, this ministry in Africa, where they made the point that, the government can send people checks, it can give financial support, and that's important, but it's not enough. And people
Mm,
also need love and support.
yeah.
And that's something that like government can't do. And there are wonderful people who work for the government as well. There are nurses doing great work, social workers who do great work. So they do, like individuals there can love as well. But also that's where the church can step in and do that. The church can love people, and love is as necessary as financial support.
Yeah. I love that line, right? If you took it from them or wherever, the government
Oh,
gives
I
checks.
stole it from them completely.
Yeah. Yeah. Government gives checks, but the church loves. And ultimately, like, who loves? Individuals love.
Yeah.
It's not the Episcopal Corporation of Saskatoon, right? It's Bishop Mark visited and talked to someone. Father Matt went to, some family that was grieving, right? We visited with our neighbors, whatever, right? Like ultimately love is a person to person thing. There's a vulnerability. I guess that's part of my challenge is there's a proximity that's required.
Hmm.
I think maybe that's a bit of the challenge right now is,
Yeah.
how do we love while still staying away, and
Love at a distance.
and
How do we do that?
there's been lots of good stories about that, but I think it's and I don't know, like, I keep working on those ideas, but part of me is just sitting of like, I think it's also okay to be like, just to feel the ache. Sometimes I've talked about like just that
Yeah.
I can't love to the fullness that I desire right now. And that's not necessarily, maybe that's not a problem totally to solve,
Hmm.
but it's good to even me reconnect of like, I miss catching, the 90-mile-an-hour fastball that my nephew throws and almost like destroys my face.
Yeah.
And like, like I miss that, and it's okay to reconnect with that so that maybe when I can then love and be present and be proximate in those ways again, I might to a level that I wasn't doing before. I don't know.
Yeah, that's a neat point. Will this separation from one another, will it make us be used to not being with people, or will it make us like appreciate the ability to connect with people that much more? And I hope that it leads us to the second one.
Yeah. I think that's it's a good thing to be a little bit afraid of, like there's are we going to just go back, or are we going to go forward with a new appreciation? And
Yeah.
I think it's going to be a mixed bag. I think the world will be different, but I think some of us will fall back on some, tendencies. And, it's like sometimes we, in my job or whatever, we do retreats and kids have their high after a retreat weekend or a conference, and you kind of come back, crash to earth a little bit, but you stay on the high for a little while. I think we might see that a little bit here as, the province reopens there's going to be a bit of a high, of like, hey, life is back. And then, and maybe appreciate and do all the work. And then we might kind of, settle in a little bit. And so
Yeah, that
I think
often
it's
seems
good
to
to
be.
have this accountability, or just, coming back to it. Cause yeah, we're, we're, we're beautiful, but broken people. Right. So it could be,
Amen.
yeah.
But maybe that kind of brings us to the second point I want to bring back to this line of Jesus that we will do greater works than Jesus. And I have to keep making myself say that because it seems so unbelievable, but it's what Jesus tells us, right? The one
Mm.
who believes in me will do what I do and greater works than me. And the one, at least the example that I gave of one way maybe we can make sense of that is that like Jesus fed the 5,000, and that's amazing. But looking at like the church worldwide, like how many people are fed? The people that Jesus healed, how many people are we able to heal through hospitals and things? The way that Jesus preached the gospel to people, how many people have we done that to? Like,
Yeah. I
does
think,
that answer that question? I guess are there other answers we can have to that question?
I think so. And I think maybe how you frame it that way is where I get nervous about that is I think of my actions in a one-to-one comparison to Jesus,
Oh,
right? Like,
yeah,
can I feed 10,000 or do that? Like, as opposed to maybe he meant like the church, the body as a whole, as a unit will surpass what he's accomplished. Right. But
yeah,
maybe my uncomfortableness with that in yourself when you had said that was, I think of myself like straight up one-to-one, like,
yeah.
am I going to tell that person to lift up? And there, I think there can be a danger on both fronts, as I even say that, to say, I think it is to look at my piece within the greater whole, right? My piece of the greater puzzle, the mosaic, that God is building. But um, I find myself sometimes as we approach kind of Pentecost and the Holy Spirit is sometimes I treat myself too much as a cog in a wheel, just a little piece, that I also underplay that sometimes God wants to do something miraculous and powerful through me.
Yeah.
And
And to,
I think often we sometimes doubt that, and not that I seek out the fantastical, the mystical, or the miraculous, but I mean, there's stories. The saints have done amazing things, and
yeah.
some of those
And that's
things
maybe back
Jesus
almost to
didn't
that
do.
opening point of like selling ourselves short at times too and being afraid of shining too much. And yet it's not something that we do on our own, but like if God wants to do those things, then like who are we to tell him that, oh, you can't do that through me.
Hmm.
Right?
Do you? This is just a question as we're sitting on that. Is uh, do you think that's our own self doubt there, or do you think maybe like if I'm the devil, like evil is like, do you think you naturally lean on that, right? Is to convince people that God is not speaking to them. Like that. I think maybe do we not teach, not like maybe vocally, whatever is, we don't have a confidence of discernment. So we never really make the decision or go because we're like, well, that's just me and my pride, not what
Yeah.
God really wants of me. Like, I don't know. Like, is there something we can do as a church community to help kind of affirm people of like, that is the Lord's prompting. That is the Spirit calling you, not your ego. Like, I think you have a hard time
Yeah.
discerning.
No, that's fair. And in a way, like when I think of my call to priesthood, like so much of that it was not just me discerning this by myself and thinking, yep, I'm called, I'm going to be a priest now. But it was discerning in union with the larger church, with my seminary, with the diocese, with parishes that I
Hmm.
served in. And I think like that's a lot of the answer in terms of how do we discern well. We don't do that by ourselves, but we
Hmm.
discern well with a spiritual director, with a community of faith, with the teachings of the church.
Yeah, I'll be honest. I think there can be some uh, lay person jealousy that
Smart.
sometimes we don't have. I mean, we can. I've been in the process of kind of starting back up with a spiritual director, and it takes a while to find a match and timing and all that kind of stuff. And not every lay person has a spiritual director in a formal way. But also like that community. Like I remember, like is it? Oh, I think they do it at your Jack and you know ordination, priesthood ordination, where like the rector comes or the formation guy and he gives a little spiel and this is why we think, Matthew's ready or blah, blah, blah. And
Yeah.
I was like, nobody really does that for like, and this is why you're ready to be a parent. And this is why you're ready to like get married. Like, I know we do marriage prep and stuff, but like, it's not as formal.
Mm-hmm.
And not that I like formal institutions all the time, but at least it ensures like you're getting that external feedback. Like that's not built in. It's not baked in necessarily to the
Oh,
way
yeah.
of kind of the Christian life. And, that's why I've loved, our parishes we've developing some of the, with discovery or kind of small groups or, alpha or youth ministry, trying to foster a bit more some small groups or is you start to get some of that accountability or like, like in being a meds group, like, but like those structures aren't necessarily there for everybody
Yeah.
out of the gate,
Yeah, I agree. Like those small communities of faith are really, really essential, I think. But in a way that gets back to this same point of like if I wanted a small community of faith and if I decided, well, the church needs to give me one, I would never have one.
Sure.
But again, it was individuals within the church fostering that, right? And making it happen and having those commitments to support one another in it.
Yeah. And maybe it's even us, I guess, we are the institution. I mean, we work for the institution, the problem of like, the church also responding of like, as a staff and parish council, we come up with pastoral plans, initiatives, but sometimes also is like, we respond to the movement of a parishioner comes up with a great idea. Like, I think, was it like Sarah Fallman coming up with idea of like, what they call it, the meal chain type of stuff for, families or whatever. It was like,
oh. And so people, this is the ministry at the parish that was founded by a parishioner to provide meals to new parents. And as a parishioner came to us, it was a great idea and it's off and running now.
Yeah. So I like that. And maybe it's just maybe we need to be more vocal in giving permission to be like, if you have a good idea in this, like we're here to encourage you and living out this call to love and, do great things. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it might be a good point to end on. Yeah, that's supporting one another in this call to do great things. And maybe just one last point too, I think, like as we were talking about doing greater works than Jesus, maybe a reason that this is kind of uncomfortable for me too is it almost sets like, if we're setting up a comparison, like Jesus is here, and are we like here or are we here?
Mm.
But of course, that's not how it works. It's like we're all together in this. It's us and Jesus doing whatever we do now. And all of that comes from his grace and strength and spirit and our relationship with him.
Mm-hmm.
And if there is any hope of doing, as he says, greater works than him, it's because he's still doing them with us and in us.
Amen.
Yeah.
And just a form of that is like, I think we're called to do great things, but great things like through him, with him, in him, to steal that language.
Yeah.
It's like, and so I've sometimes gone of like, how do I, keep myself on solid ground that I'm knowing I'm doing that is like, am I doing it through him? Am I doing it with him? Am I doing it in him? And kind of the question of like, if you have a great idea, like, okay, bring it to the parish, bring it to us or whatever, but also like bring it to God, like bring it to prayer. Right. And then, it's Padre Pio, like pray, hope, don't worry, like go through that process. And, and I think just also just affirm, maybe we could do that. I'm throwing it out there, but maybe it's a challenge of like a comment of like go affirm somebody today or some project, like a comment of like, what's something great that you've seen going on or something great you've done, like be uncomfortable and maybe we post and share something like that. I don't know.
Sounds great. And if I could maybe too, a last thought I thought as you were talking that when you talk about doing great things, like phoning a neighbor who you know is isolated is a great thing to do.
Yeah.
Like raising a family in love and faith is a great thing to do. So sometimes I think we miss how great the day-to-day things we can do are.
Yeah. Great things don't have to make the evening news,
Yeah.
And a simple thing as you said that is like, when you're saying about calling the neighbor, I just thought, did I leave the person better than I found him? If I did, then maybe I did a great thing,
There you go.
Any other parting shots of wisdom or challenges for us?
I think you closed us off well.
All right. Well, thanks everybody for joining us and commenting along. Yeah, if you want to affirm somebody or call out something great you think you've done that the Lord's been doing in your life or those around you, share that. That'd be great. Tag the person, right? Give them a shout out. Because I think we all need that a little bit, and we all need some good news. What's his name from The Office has been doing that, news show is let people know that there's a lot of good stuff, and it doesn't have to make the evening news. But I think there is a lot of hope and goodness out there. And hopefully this brought a little joy to your day, and we know that you're bringing it to lots around you. So God bless you. And yeah, comment, share, do all that fun stuff. And we'll see you on the internet, and hopefully sometime gathered here in the near future.
Amen. Thank you.
Amen.